Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so very much for being with us for the second session of Smart City Water Lunch and Learn webinar. Um, I'm really glad that you all could make it, and thank you so very much for that. As before the last session, today we also have Dr.Lisha Guo. She is the product owner of Visual ISIMO, VOSwim, and Data Current, the three softwares that we provide in Smart City Water. This session, Dr.Lisha Guo is going to talk about hydrologic modeling and flood prediction under intense rainfall versus climate change. As of the last session, feel free to ask your question or chat with each other in the chat section. Feel free to ask any question at the end of the session. I'm going to read the questions, and Lisha is going to provide and address those questions. Also, I'm going to provide the link to our LinkedIn account as well as our Twitter. Feel free to consider subscribing and reaching out to us if you have any question even after the session. And we're going to be pleased and honored to provide any sort of knowledge that we haven't shared with each other for our community. I'm going to pass on the mic to Dr. Lisha Guo, and we will start the session right away. And also, we are recording the session, just for the record, and we will provide a copy of this webinar on our social medias. I'm going to pass on the mic. Feel free to talk to each other or ask any question on the chat section. Have a good one. Dr. Lisha Guo, back to you.
Thank you, Jason. My screen. Okay. So today we're going to talk about the hydraulic modeling, and then first we'll be review something about climate change and also flooding, and then we'll talk about how we use VO, a single event, and the containers to run the simulations. So first, some introduction about myself. So I had a PhD in the water engineering. So I specialized over 10 years in the water wastewater engineering. So I've done and know a lot about the hydrologic or hydraulic modeling, and also have expertise and knowledge in the biochemical process modeling and control, as well as data analysis, machine learning. And since I'm working on as a product owner, so I have expertise in the software development and product management. So as Jason mentioned, feel free to ask questions by the end of the session. So today, first we're going to review, and I will show you some examples about the flooding and the climate change. And then I will give an example how we do the single event modeling, and then how we can import the single event project into a continuous view project. And we will run like a simulation with multiple years, like over 50 years of climate data. And I will show some very interesting insights from those modeling exercises. So first, let's begin. Okay, the flooding. So I'm not sure if you guys have read the news. So for myself, I saw those news. So it's like in early May or end of April, there was a flooding, a very bad flooding in the northwest Ontario and also in the northern Alberta. So there's some photos that I found from internet. So this one is from the First Nation community, Alberta. And this one is like much closer to Toronto. It's in the Thunder Bay, Ontario. And both of those flooding photo are taken is from the May in this year. So if you look at the photo more carefully, you can see like something like those white. It's snow, right? It seems like the ice and the snow is also floating on the surface of the water. So and then I did some investigation about what's the reason, right? I did some research and checked the data. So it seems like the flooding, especially in a cold country like in Canada. So most times it's like a combination of snow melting and precipitation. So that's a chart. That's like a real measurement data from the gauges. So that's a station from the Thunder Bay, and that's measurement data from January until May. That's like a five months data here. So you can see that if you remember right, the photo before I showed it's like in May, so it's like around the April, end of April and May. So you see like the this is snow depth. Snow depth is decreasing. That's because the temperature is rising at that period. So that means this flooding is like as I mentioned here, it's like a process of both snow melting and precipitation. And later on in the example, so I will show you how we simulate those process, snow accumulation and the snow melting in the VO. And very interesting, on the other half of the Earth, like in the south, Australia, they also have some flooding issue in early of this year. So this photo, right, it's Brisbane January in this year. So you see that's before, and this is after. So it's a very bad flooding event in Brisbane. And this one is another photo because I have been living in Brisbane for like almost 3 years. So this place is a place I went there very often, like on my weekend. So people go there to take a walk, and they will enjoy time with family and friends. So it's like a South Bank. It's like a recreation park. So that's a river. So you see the river almost reaching the bridge, and that's just the CBD of the Brisbane. And this event, some people report is like a one in 100 year event. And just 10 years ago, like around 2011, there also another very bad flooding event, and also it's like a whole city almost under a threatening like submerged. A lot of places were flooding just like 10 years ago, and this is happening again. And personally, I do feel a little bit sad when I saw the photos, because this is a place that I went there quite often, like almost every weekend. But the reason for the flooding in those Australia is somehow different. And the main reason for the flooding in those areas, like a coastal area, is because of the like hurricanes, heavy rains, very heavy rains. So you check the data here, right? That's also like measurement data from their Bureau of Environment in Australia. So you see like here, so just like April or February, right? End of February, early March. So like just 2 days, like almost 500 millimeter rainfall. And if I count this one in, that's like a 600, almost 600 millimeter in 3 days. So that's very huge rain, a lot of rain down to the city in 3 days. And that's also another graph that shows like the distribution of the rainfall in 24 hours. So you can see a lot of red points. So those points means that in 24 hours, the rainfall is above 100 millimeter. So to conclude, right? So the rainfall, the flooding, that is what we saw in Australia or in the South Queensland or Eastern Queensland, is because of this heavy rainfall. It's like a thunderstorm or like a hurricane weather. So that's a difference, right? When we're talking about flooding, that's like we need to understand what's the reason between those local climate. It's different, so the reason is different. So that here's another chart that is from the IPCC. So IPCC is an intergovernmental panel on climate change. So like they will provide reports every several years. They will give a report about the review what's the climate condition now and give a prediction for the future. And this report is in 2018, and it's a special report. So this report is like the do some analysis, and the report special is about, it's called global warming of 1.5 degree. What does it mean? Because in 2018 it was predicted that in next decade the surface the surface of the global temperature will arrive like 1.5 degrees. So they did some research and do some modeling and analysis to say what will happen if the global warming of 1.5 degrees. So if anyone who are very interested in the climate change and want to see what's the impact from there, I do recommend you to read this report to say what people find in there. And this is a very good organization that they will do those research, and also they publish some data about climate change, and also like a global warming factor index, right? You have different greenhouse gas. So those type of things information you can also find from this panel. And so that's those lines, right? We can just for the moment we don't look at them, those lines, but you just pay attention to those gray lines. Those green lines, those are the measurement data. Those are the real data, observed data. So you just say that the temperature is increasing dramatically from around 1960. So you see like a very sharp, like a slope, steep slope here. So that means from 1960, the global temperature, that's a time when the global temperature has been increasing a lot. And that point somehow aligns with human activity. And this organization, they do have some another comparison to show that if there's no human activity, what's the global temperature will be look like. And based on their research, they think that this increasing is mostly caused because of the human activity. Okay, so that's like a whole picture of the climate, the temperature from those report, right? But let's look at the temperature or the climate at our locally, like in Toronto. So again, those data I found it from internet, and they are the real measurement data. So that they're not prediction, they are real measurement data. So we can see what is happening in the past. So like this one, so that's like average daily maximum temperature over almost 50 years. So maybe I separate them between like May to October and then November to April, because normally in Canada the winter time or the snowing time starting from November and then finish around like April. So May and October is kind of a warmer seasons for Canada. So you can see that even though the maximum temperature right in the warmer time not change a lot, but you do see like this one in the winter time over this 50 years, there's something increasing trend here. And same thing for the minimum, the minimum temperature, right? This one we say, you can see it's not too much change, right, over those 50 years. But we do can see it's very clear, like increasing trend since 1960, right? It's a very clear trend of the increasing of this wintertime minimum temperature. So from those two charts, we can somehow say that so over those 50 years, the minimum temperature is increasing, and also the temperature in the winter time in general is increasing, right? No matter it's maximum or minimum, it's increasing, and also the minimum temperature in the summertime is also increasing. So that means that uh, we kind of have a warmer winter because the low temperature or the cold seasons is getting warmer compared to the 50 years ago. So that means we have a much warmer winter than before. That's from the data. It's telling us those observations. And next, let's look at the rain, the precipitations, what is happening in those 50 years. So we can see that it's again, so I separate between different seasons. So this one again, that's in the like warmer time is orange, and the cold time is in the blue color. So this one we don't see too much change for those winter time or the cold seasons, but we do some a little bit slight increasing for the summertime for the number of the rain events. And the total rain event, total precipitation, we somehow we don't see so much changes over those 50 years. So that's about that's like a quick review, summary about the global change, climate change, and the historical temperature change, and what's the reason for the floodings for different regions. And then next, I'm going to give you some examples, like how we can do the simulation using the VO. So first, the single event and continuous climate conditions. So they have different scopes. We have mentioned this many times. So I do think it is very important for people to think about when they are doing the modeling. So a single event project will only consider like those precipitation, like a surface runoff. So it won't consider those long-term process like a snow melting and and the groundwater exchange, etc. So that means that if we think about flooding or want to model rain event or runoff, like for example in Queensland, in Brisbane, so perhaps the single event will be give more insight there, because the main reason for their flooding is because they have a very huge rain, like a lot of rain there. It's like a design storm, one in 100 year return. So in that case, you can use like a single event. But on the other hand, like if you think about the flooding, like in the Thunder Bay, in the Alberta First Nation, so this often involves with a snow melting, like snow community snow melting. So in that case, so we need to think about to use a continuous project, because the single event won't model those long-term process. It will only be modeled in the continuous project. So here is a very simple example that I create. So first it's a single event project, and it's just very simple model. We have an urban area, and then we have a runoff, and this IDF, right? It's like the one that I generated under 12-hour design storm using the SCS type 2 design storm. So all those things you can directly create it in the VO, and I can show you guys after I finish the presentation. And also we have some resource on internet, and you can find that they do have published some IDF tables by considering the climate change. So you can also copy paste those IDF table and use them to generate the design storm and run the simulation. So that's simulation results by using those 5 design storms. So you can see very clearly that if you have a heavier rain, so the peak flow will increase, and also your total runoff will also be increased. That's like a single event project, and then for the continuous. So it's very simple to create a continuous project in the VO. So you can just directly import that single event into continuous. So, and then you can set up the simulation. So the simulation that I do here is that I use up to 50-year historical rainfall from the Toronto climate data. So you can see that it's starting from around 1960 until 2013, 2012. So it's about 50 years of climate data. And I run a model using those precipitation and temperature data in this continuous project. So that's a result. That's a result here. So you can see like that. That's first I did some analysis for the Sentinel Flow. So that's a plotting of those all those 50 years by seasons. So you can see that in the spring, the flow is much higher than the summer, autumn, or winter. So this just match with our observation, right? Because that's in the springtime, only those north or northwest area will have flooding, may have severe, or maybe in our local, we can see like the flow rate is much higher when it's a springtime, when the snow starts to melt. So next, what I do is like I will be focused on the in the springtime to see what the is there any changes over those 50 years over those long-term climate conditions. So first for the flow rate. So for the flow rate, I do not see too much changes. And you see here that's the average, and that's maximum flow over those 50 years. So I cannot say that it's a significant change, or we do see some trend here. But if I put a threshold, that means I put like a 20 cubic meter per second as a threshold, and I measure how many accidents happened in those 50 years. So we can say that in the last 20 years, right, we do see like it's more accidents like above in the threshold compared to the first 30 years. So what it's telling us is that in those 20 years, at least in this simulation period, right, in those 20 years, it seems like the flow rate is tend to be will be more frequently going above that 20 millimeter per second. It's happening more often compared to the first 30 years. The snow depths, right? So the snow depths, you see that the change is very clear. So like that's black, that black dash line, that's like an average of the previous 30 year, and this is like the last 20 year. So you see like a decreasing. Even if I don't draw those lines, you can see somehow like the decreasing trend over those 50 years. So this one makes sense because we do say that like in the previous slides we say that because the temperature was increasing over those 50 years, especially in the cold time. That means from November to December. So that means there will be less snow accumulated in general, like year round. So that's why we see this trend, and which is matched with the temperature observation data. So next, I want to give some more details about the snow accumulation and snow melting. So that's those two charts is like comparison of the precipitation and the snow depths and also the temperature. So like here, that's you can see like a very clear job, right? A very clear job in the March in the April. And this one just because you see here the temperature is increasing in March and April. So the snow depth is dropping. That means snow is melting during this period. But before that, you see the snow depth is somehow accumulated, rather increase or at least stay around that level. And this one is because in the general, right? In general and February, the snow, first the temperature is low, so much lower temperature during this period, and also you have some snow like precipitation. For this time, the precipitation mostly will be the snow, so that's why you say the snow is accumulated and stay maintained around that level, and then suddenly dropped in the March and April because of the temperature increased. So again, this one somehow aligned with the observation that I showed at the very beginning about flooding that we saw right now happening in the north or northwest Ontario and Alberta. So here I want to give some more information about how we do this continuous simulation, especially for the snow melting. So one thing I showed here is like I run two simulations. One, I just run 1 month. I just run like for 1 month April because we do see right here, we see like April is like sometimes it's melting there. So that means there may be some concern. So I just run for April. But in other runs, I run from the November. November normally means when the snow started. So I run from November until April. So that's the difference. So you can see that if I just run a very short term, like for April, you see the flow, right? The flow is much lower compared to the other run, which I run starting from the November. And the reason is because if I just run like for 1 month, there won't be any snow accumulated, right? For the period from November to March, there's nothing accumulated. So then yeah, I suddenly run like from April, and then that's why there's not enough snow accumulation. Of course, there won't be too much snow melting happening observed here. So that's why the snow, the flow is much lower compared to that one. If I run a little bit longer time from November. So the message from here is that if we want to simulate the snow accumulation and melting, so we do suggest you that run the simulation starting from November. I mean, in Canada, normally it's November when the snow started. So So we start run simulation from November, so you can track how the snow is accumulated, and then in spring how it will be melted. Instead, right, sometimes people may just run for 1 month, and that one won't give the result won't be very accurate. But in the summertime, I think that's fine, right? If you just want to run a comparatively shorter time, that's okay. Because in the summertime, there's no snow accumulation. It's like a rain come and go, like a runoff. And as long you start your simulation from a dry day, that should be okay. But for the winter time, if you want to model this process, so I do suggest you run the simulation from the November when the snow started. So that's mostly about the presentation. So I will give a conclusion here, and then I will show you in the software. So first, the flooding, right? So we just showed that the flooding in the cold countries like Canada, or in the coastal countries like Australia, is different. So we need to understand the reason. First, we need to understand reason, then we can model it, and then propose some solutions, right? So first, we need to understand what's reason why it's causing the flooding. In different areas, it will be different reasons. So normally in the cold countries, it's often related to the snow melting and also temperature increasing and the precipitation. But in the coastal countries, normally it's because of heavy rains, like in Australia, or the hurricanes. And you can compare that the rain amount in those countries will be much higher than the precipitation in those cold countries, like in Ontario. That's two. So we need to consider those two, or at least those two conditions, two different areas. They have different reasons for the floodings. And then for climate change, right? So we do see that from the historic data. I'm not talking about the prediction, the model, or something like that. You just look at the historic data. So you can see that the temperature globally increased very quickly since 1960. And I do recommend you to take a look at this report from IPCC. So it's called Global Warming of 1.5 degree. So it's talking not just about the climate itself, of course, temperature, climate itself, but also about what impact it will have to the human beings, to the environment, to different creatures on the planet. And the next for the single event and the continuous project in the VO. So we really need to think about the scope of your project and what you want to model, and to choose single event or continuous. And normally, right, if you want to model like a snow accumulation, melting, related flooding, or the flow rate, so normally you should choose this continuous project. But if you just want to see if the city like Brisbane, right, normally it's because of the very huge rainfall, because of the thunderstorm. These things you can use single event project to analyze the flow rate and the runoff. And when you run the simulation for the snow accumulation and melting, and as mentioned before, we do suggest you to start the simulation from in November, like when the snow started. And next, right, if you remember what I demonstrated before, showed before, right, in the example model, when I use the climate data of Toronto, we don't see too much changes in the flow rate. I mean, the flow rate itself, we don't see too much changes over those 50 years. But in this model, right, we don't think about the thing that we don't consider is like land development. So we should know that it over those like 50 or 60 years, the land surface is changed dramatically. Before there's a lot of natural area, but right now you see like those buildings, commercial side, urbanized area. So this one will be another reason that we need to consider when we want to model the flow and the runoff under the design storm or the continuous conditions. And this one we will introduce in our next webinar. So the webinar 3, we will talk about the land development in Veo and Veo Swim. So that's all from the presentation part. And I do have my. So is there any question? I saw there's some question, right? Can we use monthly rainfall data in VO and get monthly rainfall? I think the rainfall in the continuous should be right now should be daily. Yeah, it should be daily precipitation. Yeah. Let me, if there's no, but I will open my software. But meanwhile, you guys can always ask questions in the chat. Okay, so first that's like a single event, right? So the way you create a single event is like go to here, new AutoHammer project, and then that's the interface. Basically, you will say and make sure that your options, right? If you want to see the map, and then you should choose this Tatuk GIS, and you can choose your default coordinate system and click OK and close and restart. And then you have the map tab here. And then it's a schematic. So create a model schematic is very simple, as we showed in the last webinar. So it's just drag and drop, like from here, drag and drop, and then that's like a stan height. That means for the urban area. And then you drag and drop another river here. That's like a channel, and then you make a connection here. And then to make the changes to the parameters, so you select. But I prefer to drag a box to select, and then you go to the left hand, right hand. Normally, by default, the properties tab is here, and then you can change your parameters. So the only parameter I change in the example is like I just change the area to 5,000. The rest I keep the default. And then if I go back to project manager, right? You see right now by default we have a ring. You can use it, but you can also add other design storms to this ring data group. So before I do that, I want to first go to my simulation, run, and remove this default run, close, and then I will remove this ring data group. And then to add other IDF, right, you go to the resource library. So here, right, our webinar. So first thing you do is like you have to add the IDF group first. So you click this button. So choose the one you want to use, and you can use the this is the table, right? IDF table. So you can, if you have a table that you want to use it, just copy paste to this one. And then you just need to right click and create. The one I use is I use this one. It says design storm, and I choose this type. And you can give different time step, duration, and click OK. And then you have the design storm from 2 year until 100 year using these IDF tables. So that's what I have here, right? Just here, and then so you have the design storm now. Then next thing is just to do is add to the ring data group. So you click, right click, and you choose add all design storm to project. Okay, and then automatically there will be run created as well. So you see like all my ring data design storm in the project manager, and then you can save it. In this case, I don't want to save. I already have. So you have design storm from 2 to 100 year, and then you go to run, and then you just need to click the run button. And then it will dump for you, and you want to check the result, you select one, and you can do plotting, and you choose different runs, and you can also check in this somehow like a hydrograph summary table, and you click on this button, show all runs, and then it will show all those runs, and you click on the header, it will sort the table by that one. So that's like a single event. It's quite easy to do that in the VO. Any questions? Snow accumulation and snow. Okay, this one. Okay, let's go to the continuous now. Okay, so now I have the single event project, right? So next step you can do is you can import this one to the continuous. So first I create a continuous. So that's the interface of continuous. So by here, right, that's the data that we have here. So you can see that compared to single, there are much more data that you can put for the continuous. Because the continuous, right, it will simulate this long-term process. So it had temperature, because this one would be used for the snow accumulation and the snow melting snow for process, right? So that's the temperature why it's here. So the way that I import my single event. I go to here, file, import scenario, and I find my single event project. It's here. Okay, import. So it will be imported, right? So the import here will only import those model structure. It won't import those rain data. Because here the rain data, the format is somehow different, and also the rain data here will be from the rain gauge, right? So normally it will be different. So the way you add the rain data here is go to the resource library again, and the first thing you do is add a rain gauge. So add a rain gauge, and then you add a reading CSV file. Yeah, and then you browse the data like precipitation, right? Like this one. Double click and OK, and then you will be added. So, so if there any date that missing, then it will give you an error message telling you that there's some date missing. So that's why I think right now it's only used for the daily. It's not for the monthly, it's only for the daily. Okay, so once you have it and then you add it, so that's what I have here. You have the precipitation data. So the similar way to add the temperature. So first go to the continuous and add the temperature gauge. And again, you click this button and find the CSV file temperature. So the temperature rate is also in the daily, and you have a minimum and a maximum. And also if there's any data like dates missing, then it will give you a pop-up message telling you that those dates are missing. So you need to go back and fix those one and then re-import it. Okay, once it's done, then you will see something like here added to the resource library. So and now you can add the precipitation and the temperature to the project manager. So the way to do that, you select and then add to model. You can give a name, right? Like here, precipitation. And then you say something added to the rain data and also for the temperature. Add to model. Yeah. So now you have temperature and the rain data in the project manager. So I will, and again, right? You can save it. So resource you can save it, and then next time when you open it, you can reuse it for any of your project, either it's View or View Swing. Close. Okay. So now we have the temperature and the precipitation data. To then, next step is set up the simulation engine. So I go to here, simulation engine. So some parameters is here. So those are all those snow melt or snow accumulation or snowfall temperature parameters that you can play with. The one that I think is that is important, right? May have some impact on your result. First is the melting temperature, right? Basically, it's telling you at which temperature this one will be snow will start to melt. And you can differentiate that by different months. We have 12 months, right? You can differentiate like for example, I give a different one, and then you have a different snow melting. The most important thing, of course, is the one that is in the winter line, like from November to April. Those are the most important. And then the snow melting factor, that's how fast your snow will be melted. And also the snowfall temperature, right? This one somehow tells when it's like snow, when it's like rain. And yeah, and also there's some soil, like a soil storage capacity reduction rate because of the frozen soil. And another thing that I think is important when we run the long-term simulation is to change this time step. It's very important, especially in this case. I'm running for like 50 years, so I will choose like 1 hour as my time step. And then you click OK, and you can click add to run to the batch run. And you can, of course, you can also open the engine right from here. It's the same window. Yeah. And then you can add your run data temperature here and choose your date, and then you can click the run. Yeah, this one may take some time to finish. Okay. We are designing a pond in modern symmetry post discharge rate. Yeah, this one is the one that we're working on. So we're working on like a pond sizing tool. Okay, simulation is done. Okay. We're working on some pond sizing tool that will give you like at least an initial estimation what is the pond size will be, and you can use that as a starting point and to do some adjustment and tuning the final discharge, like final pond size for your project. This one can be provided. I think so, right, Jason? I think Jason just mentioned that there will be
Yeah, this session is already being recorded, and we will post it on our social media. However, if you want the PowerPoint that Dr. Guo was explaining, feel free to just email me, and I can just forward a copy of that to you. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so I think it's done, right? The simulation is done. Okay, let me just open the one that I have. Just open the one. I think it's this one. Okay, so after you run simulation, the thing that you can check, right, is you can check like a water balance. So this one you select a stand height, for example, and then it will open up a summary, like a summary table. This one is by year, and for different routing sectors, and this one is by month, and then you have a seasonal. And then let me close this one. That's pie chart, like water balance. And also, of course, you can plot it. You can plot the result. If I select this one, I plot. Take a yeah. The initial loading may take some time. This one is a 50 years data. So you see like plotting here. That's another way, and then you can import export. So something I do want to show you here is like this one. Those two scenarios. So those two scenarios is like I just run the same model. But this one I just run like 1 month, and this one I run for like from November to April. So if I open this one, right? If I open the plotting, so you see if I zoom into this area, so you see my maximum is like around 18, right? Like 20 something. And also if I open my this one, this one maybe it's better to show that snow depths. That's here, right? So you see that's the thing I showed in my presentation, the snow depths. is decreasing, and you see very clear like accumulation, like maintain, and then decreasing. This one is it's very clear showing you that the whole process how it goes in there. But if I go back to this one, right? If I select and I open this one, so let's run off. Let me go to my snow depths. You see here, right? Compared to that one, there's nothing almost, nothing from here in April. For that one, you see like very clear like going up and down trend. But here it's like this one is just because I have precipitation happening on that day. There's no accumulation and melting process modeled in this scenario. The reason is very simple. It's because I just run it for 1 month. So that's why, as I emphasize again and again in the presentation, that if we do want to model this process, it's better we start from the November, right? From November. For summertime, I think it's fine. For summertime, you don't need to run like for the entire 4 months or half a year. You can just run for that particular day or starting from dry right until the rain finished, like a few days. That's okay. But for the winter time, I think we do need like running like continuously for several months.
All right. Thank you so very much, Lisha. I don't know if you got the chance to answer all the question. I'm pretty sure you answered the question of Jason, another Jason. And then there was one question from Harshad Patel that asked, what kind of data required for snowmelt accumulation simulation?
Yeah, that one I
Have you got?
also, yeah.
Oh, you already answered. Okay,
Yeah,
because
that
I got
one
some network disconnection from my end.
I think so. So that one you need you need like precipitation and the temperature, and then that's the data input, and then aside from that, then it's about the parameter adjustment. So the important thing is like your melting temperature, your soil capacity, and also the melting speed, and also your snowfall temperature. I would say those four, right? Those four would be very important when you tune in the models. Yeah.
Right. And then the last question from Asif, I already answered that one, and I think you already mentioned and addressed Asia's question as well. So thank you everyone for this session, for making this time. Again, if you guys have any question, feel free to reach out to us by email, and we're going to be always for you answering the question. Great news that I can say is a new ECA CLI legislation is coming out, and I believe that we're going to have a webinar associated with that one, the new ECA CLI legislation. That is going to be mid/late June or maybe early July. We're going to have someone either from municipalities or from Conservation Authority that is going to come up and talk about that one. I can see that Christian Gabriel has a question. Um, if feel free to let me see if I can allow the mic to you. I gave you the mic access. So, Christian, if you want to ask any question, I believe you can unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry, I actually typed them out, but I'm not sure if you saw them.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if we missed them. Yeah, I can't see them. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess one question was in the data tree, the groundwater data was shown. I was just wondering how that gets considered or used in VO. And then when we talked about the continuous simulation, the snow accumulation was used as an example to explain why we would do the continuous simulation. Um, from my experience, the groundwater conditions can also be very different throughout the season. Usually, lower water tables in the summer, shallow water tables in the spring, sort of thing. So, if you want to consider those effects, you would need a continuous simulation as well. And I was just wondering if VO does address that um, at all, the sort of the soil moisture condition for infiltration.
Great question, Lisha.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the model, right, itself, we do model those groundwater infiltration, and that's something like a parameter setting part. You can set that, and but if you're talking about, I think you're asking about it like groundwater data that you say in the panel. So that one we don't use it. We don't use it in this example. That one is used when we run the wetland. That one is particularly used when we run the wetland. So like wetland, that one basically that's the elevation of the groundwater. That's the elevation of groundwater, and it is above or below. So you have the water coming or coming out from the wetland. So that is the groundwater data in the project manager. But I do think that is what you're talking about is very interesting, and it's something that is really worth research and the future investigation. Yeah.
Awesome. Uh, did you get the your question answered, Christian?
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. I guess I'm. Yeah. I guess I have to look back and see how much how much groundwater a bit beyond the infiltration is in VO, because I'm thinking more along the lines of integrated modeling where you would actually have the groundwater represented as well, and then you could get that sort of recharge discharge connection. But
Mhm.
that's no that's probably beyond this presentation anyway. So I'm thank you very much for taking the question.
My
No,
pleasure.
that's great. That's great. That's a very great feedback, I think. Yeah, that's something we should think about if we are talking about the modeling, like especially in the melting, in the accumulate, especially about melting. I think that's something we do should think about in the future. Because from my own experience, it's like that. So when we tune in a model, right? So there will be so many factors to consider, and that one, I think the groundwater, I think it may do contribute something to the flow, to the final discharge, because I also compare like the real measurement data, just baseline, right? Baseline without any snow, without any precipitation, just baseline. So even just baseline, we can see there is change, right? There's a change in the baseline flow. So that means there must be some other sources that is contributing to the snow melting flow in the springtime.
Awesome. Harshad Patel, I gave you the mic. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. I'm not sure if Harshad is still there, or maybe he can't use the mic. But yeah, if you have any question, feel free to reach out to us whenever. Please unmute. Yeah, I already did. You have the mic, so I already allowed your mic. So, but that might be some of the mocks in Teams. But yeah,
I think Harsha, you should also unmute from your side, right, Jason?
yeah, because I already enabled the mic for her shot. If you can click on unmute, then it should be good. But I understand sometimes that may happen in Teams that I gave the mic, but the other person from the attendees won't be able to use the mic. Um, all right. So feel free to reach out. Oh yeah, so that's probably one of the uh, bugs in Teams and the webinars in Teams. Feel free to reach out to us though. Feel free to email to us, and then we're gonna be more than happy to answer the question. Also, for whoever from you guys that don't have VO license, I already created and send it to you guys so you can check out the software. You can apply whatever you signed the presentation by Lisha today, and the license is gonna be valid until 28th of May. And during the trial period, feel free to reach out to us and ask any type of question that you guys have. We're gonna have the next session on June 8th. So already mark your calendar. And again, we're going to have that CLI ECA new legislation and talking about that and explaining the potential of new projects coming out. Probably late June, early July. And yeah, thank you so very much, everyone, for making time. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter and our LinkedIn. And we will see you on June 8th for the third session of Smart City Water webinars. That was the second session of the webinar. Thank you so very much, everyone. Thank you, Lisha, and have an amazing rest of the week. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You as well.